You are listening to Co-Create Your Life. In this podcast, we delve deep into the law of attraction, dispel common misconceptions, and give our listeners the tools they need to build a magical, purposeful existence in their everyday lives. Reclaim the creative power you already possess and join us at cocreationcoaching.org/create. That's cocreationcoaching.org/create.
Welcome to Co-Create Your Life, where we discuss the law of attraction and other spiritual topics from a Wiccan perspective. This is episode 37, Light Language, What is it and how can it help you? I am Brandon Olivares.
And I'm Christine Olivares.
And in today's podcast, we're talking about something called light language. Now, you may or may not know about this. I know I didn't know about it until Christine actually told me about it some time ago. She probably knows the exact time, but she'll tell us later. And so we're going to introduce that today and discuss what exactly that is and how it can help you. You may have been introduced to it through a recent guided meditation that Christine and I did for the last full moon, where if you heard us saying weird things in the middle of it, that was light language. And I actually got a few really positive comments about that. And one person actually said they felt like that was the thing that made the difference in that meditation. And they got a lot of awesome results from it.
Very fast.
And so that caused me to want to talk about this more. And so that's what we'll be doing today. But first, before we get to that, just an announcement. If you would like to see the show notes for this podcast, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/create037. And if you'd like to ask a question that we can answer on one of these episodes, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/ask. So again, today we're talking about light language. Now this is something I've had a complicated history with.
You and light language have a complicated relationship.
We have a sort of love-hate relationship. It's something that I don't want to like, but yet I do, and I see the use of it. So this is definitely interesting and kind of difficult episode for me, because this has been a long time in coming, and Christine's been pushing, but hoping that I get to this point for a long time.
Because I saw the potential you had with it.
Yes. So first, what is light language exactly? Basically, light language, and I'm going to give several different descriptions of what exactly it is, but it's a newer term that has been picked up in the New Age community, and it's a term I prefer because the other term for it has a bad connotation for me.
That of speaking in tongues.
Yes. So light language is basically, technically what is glossolalia, but is what is commonly referred to as speaking in tongues. It's often used in Christianity, but as we'll see, it has a very much longer and broader history in many different traditions. So I was actually introduced to it. I'll talk a little bit about my history with it first, I think.
Yeah.
It was
all my fault. I'll just tell you. Oh, no.
No, not at first.
Never mind.
No. I first heard of it when I was probably 15 years old, I would say. Because something, I don't know why, something possessed me to. For a while, I was going to a Pentecostal church, okay? Now,
I just can't picture it.
I know. I am not a charismatic person. Like, I know I come across very, I don't want to say bubbly, but very
down to earth,
expressive in my podcasts and my recordings. But in person, in real life, I'm extremely quiet.
Very introverted.
I don't talk a lot unless it's just with Christine. So I'm not your average charismatic type of person. And so it was not, and it took a lot of adjusting, and I didn't actually last there very long. But the first memory I have of knowing anything about glossolalia / speaking in tongues was at that church. And, I heard other people doing it. I really don't remember much what that sounded like, so I can't really tell you anything about that. What I do remember is being surrounded by about at least 3, 4, maybe more people, all praying over me, trying to get me to get this gift of tongues, and me being super uncomfortable. And, it was weird because their idea, the common Pentecostal idea, is that, I guess, proof of your being
baptized in the Spirit.
Well, and saved.
Yeah.
Some people don't even think you can go to heaven unless you can speak in tongues.
Yeah, that's very rare now, actually, but yes.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'd heard. So obviously there was a lot of pressure. I better get this. I better figure it out, and I didn't. I mean, and they said what they told me, I don't remember. They told me to just keep speaking just English, but they do it faster and faster until I stumbled or something. And it happened kind of a little, but it never really happened. And so I felt really embarrassed after that day. One, because I didn't want to do that. And two, because I felt like a failure for not being able to.
Oh, that's a weird, both and type thing.
Yeah. So I pretty much set that aside for many years until I met Christine. And Christine came from a Catholic background, but specifically Catholic charismatic background, where they also use this. And so at first I'm like, oh, heck no. I'm not gonna
but you always let me do it for you. You never cared if I did it.
Yeah, I let Christine do it, but I was not getting anywhere near that.
But he trusted me, so,
So, but eventually, and again, it's kind of a long story. I don't want to have the whole podcast be about this, but eventually I opened up to it because the way Christine did it was very gentle, and it really did a lot to take away my preconceived notions of it from my previous experience. So eventually I opened up to it and I started doing it. And so that lasted for a while, I guess. But, me with my analytical mind, I felt like I'm just making stuff up. There's nothing to it. Now, I'm very energetically sensitive, and I'll talk about this later, and I definitely felt energy behind it, but my analytical mind just kept saying, this is nonsense. I'm saying nothing. It's not real. Right? And so that was what caused me to doubt and to stop doing it. And Christine wasn't so happy about that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why, because you're so sensitive with energy, you are one of the most genuine speakers of light language. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh my gosh, why are you stopping doing this? Because,
right.
So,
that stopped for several years, and I had a very negative reaction to any mention of, and I still don't like the term speaking in tongues. I will not use it after this fact, because it's something I associate with Christianity, and I have a hate relationship with Christianity. I'm sorry for any Christian. It's not the specific people, it's the religion, and I just don't get along with it because of a lot of experiences I've had. And so I correlate or correspond speaking in tongues with Christianity, and so it's just not something I like to use, that term. But Christine, how long ago did you discover light language?
I started discovering it about a year ago, but then I was like, I don't know if this is the same thing, and I kind of put it on the back burner because I was like, I don't know about this.
Right, so she discovered it a while ago, and in fact, one of the main people that she studied that teaches about this, we're going to have on a podcast in July.
I just found her in February.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh.
Before, the year ago, that was Vanessa Lamort.
Oh, okay.
And she's really good for those that want to listen. She has some light language transmissions and things like that. But that's how I first heard about it. Actually, no, it's not. The first time was when I was typing, because I knew there was something more to speaking in tongues. Sorry, Brandon. I knew there was more to that than just people speaking stuff.
Right.
Just off the top of their head. Like, I could feel the energy.
Right.
So I would type in, like, different things, like paganism and speaking in tongues, things like that. And there was this lady on YouTube named Gigi Young, or Gigi Young or something. Mm-hmm. And she had speaking in tongues and light language. And I'm like, what? Okay. And that's the very, very first time I heard of it. But then I don't know how I found Vanessa.
Right.
And then I found a couple other people. So Jamie, I just discovered.
Jamie Price will be the one that we'll have on in July. So that will be exciting. But we wanted to discuss this before then, especially because of the guided meditation we recently did. And it's something we want to discuss more frequently and be more open with. So anyway, Christine found that, told me about it.
Found the book that Jamie wrote.
Yeah, but I'm talking about light language in general.
Right.
And I'm more or less, no way. Now, when Christine read Jamie Price's book, I actually kind of was intrigued by it. The way she described things was very interesting.
I was surprised, too.
Yeah. But overall, my reaction to the whole thing was no way. And again, it's a long story. How I eventually did open up to it, it just sort of ended up happening eventually. Actually, I don't remember how at this point. Christine probably remembers everything about it.
Because you kept... Well, first, when you started reading or listening to the book with me, you started doing it in your head, and you could I don't know if you thought it or what happened.
Yeah.
And then I mostly always tell when you were doing it when you didn't say a word.
When I was doing healing for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would test it out a lot, like, because I was, again, very skeptical. So I would do healing with it, I would do healing without it, and probably 9 times out of 10, Christine could guess, or she could predict which one I had done, if I had done it or not.
Because I could literally, in my mind's eye or my spiritual eye, see it. I could see the codes.
And also for a long time, Christine would say that when I would do healing for her, she would keep saying, "Did you say anything?" I'm like, no. So I hear light language, I don't know if it's a physical sound you heard.
It was a lot of hissing noises.
A lot of whispering
which actually you don't have anything anywhere close. I just think it was, I heard the remnants of it, I think.
Right. So, and I'm like, that's a really interesting experience. So anyway, things kept happening that kind of proved it to me, but that's a different story. So I want to talk about where it comes from, because again, it's something that, as far as its correlation with Christianity, it's no way for me. I wouldn't touch that. But I found a lot of resources, and so has Christine, where it's been used for thousands of years across many, 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 many different traditions. It's been used in many different Native American traditions, shamanistic traditions, witchcraft traditions, for thousands of years. It's a very common thing. Obviously, they don't call it the same thing, but it's very common. You hear about ecstatic utterances, especially, I know Plato talked about this several different times. I don't remember how many times exactly, but several times, with people who would channel the gods and have ecstatic utterances. And, that would be something that was valued. People would listen to that. People would get value from that. So it's something that's been around for a long time. And it's very possible that Christianity got the practice from paganism.
Oh, I'm sure it's 100%, because there's a Bible verse in one of the Gospels, I can't remember which one, maybe Mark, that says, that Jesus says, don't babble like the pagans do. Don't babble like the pagans do, which references glossolalia, I believe.
So I think definitely Christians got it from pagan practice, just like anything else. Pretty much, again, different story, but everything in Christianity, we're reading a book, well, extremely slowly. We're crawling through a book called The Pagan Christ, where his premise is basically everything in Christianity is taken from pagan sources.
Yep.
And that nothing in Christianity is really original, which I'm not surprised about at all. So light language / glossolalia is an example of that, and it's been used for a long time. Now, what's interesting about it for me, I was just thinking about today, is that it's always been something that comes from a spirit, a god. It's not just something you do on your own.
Yeah.
It's always, throughout history, it's been people, let's say shamans or oracles or whatnot, who channel it from a spirit, from a deity or something like that. And that's where it comes from. It's not, people don't just start speaking. It's a spiritual experience. It's an ecstatic experience that has a lot of energy to it.
Right. And you can always tap into it, but you don't just start speaking stuff.
Right.
You have to connect with whatever, the deity or the spirit that you want to channel.
Yeah. And now I know for a lot of law of attraction people, all of this is going to be super weird, and that's fine. If this is not something you connect with, I would invite anyone to at least check it out. In fact, when this podcast is published, we're going to also have a new moon guided meditation where we will be doing this as well for intentions about the new moon, specifically about, I think we haven't done it yet while we're recording this, but about opening up to the light and things like that. But we'll be doing a new moon guided meditation with a light language transmission and that, so you can get an idea of what it sounds like. I'm not going to do it here just because I know not everyone will be comfortable with it, and I want it to be a choice that you can say, oh, this sounds interesting, let's go and check it out. But especially with channeling, a lot of law of attraction people will just say, well, it's the universe, we don't deal with specific deities. Now, myself, as someone who's been studying Wicca, I deal with the god and the goddess. I have specific deities I work with. I work with Hades specifically is one of my major deities I work with. So when I'm doing this kind of thing, I'm connecting to a specific energy. And you don't always have to know specifically what energy it is, because sometimes
you don't.
Certain beings will come through.
Yeah.
But it's always a channeling. Now, I want to talk about this being a channeling. One thing that Abraham Hicks talks about, speaking of channeling, is that we're always channeling, especially when we're in what they would call the vortex, when we are in our highest vibrational state, in alignment with our higher self, our inner being, whatever you want to call that part of ourselves, our greater self, we're channeling. Okay, now that doesn't mean you have to be sitting in front of a group of people and speaking what some being is saying. That's not what that means. You could be channeling while doing, while playing music, while painting a painting, doing some kind of art, while, I'm a programmer is my day job. I do programming. That's a form of channeling. That to me is a form of art. Okay. Writing, when I write my blog posts, a lot of times I learn just as much as anyone else reading it, because I'm really just letting go and allowing the thoughts and the ideas to come through me. And they're not totally formed when I first start. So that's a channeling. Anything you're doing where you're in alignment is a channeling of the universe. It doesn't have to be always a specific being, but you're always channeling from that greater universal source. So this is no different. Now, it's different in a few ways, and I'll describe how exactly I view it and what the benefits of it are, but it's just another form of channeling. So some people might prefer writing as a form of channeling. Now, that may be automatic writing where you're specifically trying to connect with an entity and doing that. Or it could just be blogging or journaling or whatever. Or your form of channeling could be music. Your form of channeling could be, again, programming. It could be anything. Even sports, the movement of your body can be a very sacred thing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So anything can be channeling. This is just another method. Everything you do is channeling. It's moving energy. Even when you're out of alignment, you're moving energy.
Yeah, like when you're angry.
Oh, yeah.
You really move energy.
You're moving energy. Not positive energy, but you're definitely still moving energy. So that's sort of a form of channeling.
Yeah.
So you're always channeling. So this, again, is a form of channeling. And it does generally come from a specific being. Now, you may have relationships with certain beings. It could be spirit guides, it could be gods, it could be angels, it could be ascended masters, it could be anything. It could be elementals, fairies, whatever, right? Usually for me, it's a specific deity. It is possible I've heard of fairies and stuff like that. I haven't really done that. I do.
I couldn't imagine what that sounds like.
I do most of my work with deities, but it can be anything. Jamie Price says there are 4 different types. Now, I don't know if this is a hard and fast rule, but she says there's galactic, where it's a certain extraterrestrial race. It could be elemental, which includes fairies and stuff like that, or elementals. It could be angelic, which is obvious, or she calls it ancestral, or real previous human languages. Okay, so some of them can sound like real languages.
Yeah.
So there are many different types. It can come from any different source. And to me, gods are part of that.
I completely agree with you.
And I don't know what she would categorize that under, but I would say it from deities, from gods.
Well, that's how it started.
Right.
That's what shamans would, or
right.
whatever.
Yep.
They channel gods.
Right.
And the Oracle at Delphi
Yep.
channeled Apollo and spoke in the utterances.
Yeah. So, as I said, it's always coming from some being, and it's a form of channeling. Now, there are some benefits to it over some other methods, and that doesn't mean that everyone has to do it, but it is useful for certain things.
Even to listen to is really helpful.
Right. Because basically how I see light language, first of all, is when you're channeling, let's say like Esther Hicks does when she's channeling Abraham, or like anyone does when channeling any being, you're basically receiving energy and you're translating it into words. Now, Abraham's not there sending specific words to Esther and she's just copying that. That's not how it works. Or Abraham's not there possessing Esther and speaking through her mouth. That's not how it works. What is happening is that she's receiving a stream of energy, and she says the exact same thing. She's receiving a stream of energy, and she's taking the energy and translating it into the best words she can find for that idea, for that stream of energy. Now, it's funny because I heard Abraham recently say in one of the recent workshops that it's not just the words. It's, the stream of energy is hitting the whole audience there and everyone listening.
Oh, yeah.
So there's not just a verbal component to it. There's a non-verbal component where the energy is actually flowing to everyone listening. And so you're experiencing it. And anyone into Abraham or any other channeled entity has probably had that experience where you're listening to it and you really feel good listening to it. It's not just the words, but it's the energy coming through it as well. That kind of transmission, which it really is, right? It really makes you feel a certain way because you're receiving that energy as you're listening to it. I know a lot of people who just to keep themselves in a good feeling place, they'll just listen to recordings like that because it really does make them feel happier. So it's not just verbal, it's also nonverbal. Light language is very similar, almost identical, except for one thing, that instead of taking that stream of energy and translating into English words, you're just basically turning it into sound.
Yep.
Pure sound. Okay? Now, people will say it's a specific language, whatever, and I don't know whether it is or it isn't. What matters, because I know one thing Jamie Price says is that it's not a linear language. Like for us, we say a sentence and we have a subject and a verb and an object and whatnot. It's not exactly how it works. You can't say, oh, there's a light language sentence. What's each syllable or word mean? That's not exactly how it works. It's sort of layers of meaning, and you could listen to it several times and it could actually mean different things to you. It could do different things to you.
Yep. So
it's not exactly a linear language like you might be thinking of, where, oh, this is what literally the gods speak or something. No, it's just, to me, it's the best translation of that energy into sound. And it's also sort of a co-creation with the, I guess, transmitter, the person speaking it, because it's always going to filter through their mind. So that is how I see it. It's raw energy from a specific source with a specific intent being translated into words, or into sound. I don't want to say words, into sound. Now, why is that important? Why does that matter? Because if you're listening to that, let's say you have a light language transmission about anything, about abundance, about healing, about any intention
maybe
whatsoever.
A relationship or something.
Yeah. Anything. Now, if I'm telling you in words, money and abundance is natural to you, it's everywhere, blah, 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 it's easy to find the perfect relationship, your conscious mind is listening and saying, no, it's not. I can guarantee it's not. And it's fighting, it's rejecting the words I'm saying. Now, you might do subliminals and stuff, but that's limited, and we don't even know if it works really. But with something like light language, it bypasses any kind of conscious interaction because there's nothing to reject.
Bypasses your mind.
Yeah, it bypasses your conscious mind because there's nothing to reject. There's nothing to say no to.
So it's like it goes straight into your subconscious.
Right.
Or, well, your soul.
Yeah.
Light language is also described as a soul language, too.
Right.
Because it's right from your heart.
This is the way I see it. I was thinking about this recently, I think today. Basically, you know, when you do ritual, I'm going to write a blog post soon about why we might want to do ritual. But why we might want to do ritual and why we might want to do light language is a very similar answer. Because in ritual, because I recently did a few rituals through the training I'm doing for this Wiccan tradition. And, you know, I've been very skeptical at rituals in the past because I'm a pragmatist. I'm just going to do the easiest thing to get the results I want to get, right? So if I don't have to go there and cast the circle and chant and draw, you know, down all these energies and the gods and the goddesses and whatnot, then I'm not going to do it. If I don't have to do that to get the results I want, right? But when I actually did it and opened up to it, it was such a deep, profound experience that really put me in touch with these universal energies in a way that it wasn't just archetypes. It was real, universal thought forms, energies, beings, whatever you want to say. And it was powerful. And not only that, but it got the mind out of the way. So, you know, that's the problem again with like affirmations or things like that. You can say an affirmation all day, but every time you say it, your conscious mind is going to reject it offhand. So in a ritual, and people have been doing this for thousands of years, you're drumming, you're dancing, you're chanting, you're doing whatever, you're doing certain spell components, and it's getting your mind into a different place. It's transcending your normal everyday consciousness. A lot of people will dance in ritual or drum in ritual or do all sorts of different things. We used to drum. We have these two different drums. I don't remember what specific type they are, but they're like...
One's a djembe and
one's another. It's like the type you play with your fingers. It's really cool. We used to do that to raise energy, and that was a lot of fun.
I still have them.
I know exactly where they are. So a lot of people use those sorts of things, and that's another way of getting your mind off of the resistance, out of its normal logical perspective, frame of mind, and into a more magical, more open, more receptive place. Because, you know, things in ritual, you can do all these different things and they seem so magical, and then afterwards you can be like, what was into me? Like it seems so weird after the fact. Like, why would I do all that? But it puts you in a different frame of mind that isn't available to you in your everyday life. You can't just get there. Now, you know, you can sort of get there through meditation or something like that. But even so, ritual is more dynamic in a certain sense. And so in ritual, when you're doing the chanting or the dancing or the drumming or the different things you're doing, the different symbologies you use, calling down the god and the goddess and whatnot, you are getting your mind off of why it can't happen. Because you're playing out a drama. Ritual is really all about drama, right? And so it gets your mind off of that. So light language works in the same way. Because when you're speaking it, whether it's for yourself or for another, when you're speaking it, you aren't thinking about why the thing you want can't happen. You aren't thinking about why you can't improve. You know, it's just you're fully focused on the energies being received, on the sounds being produced. And you can't do that and say, no, this can't happen. Impossible. Sort of like in meditation, why you might use a mantra. Because you can't say that mantra and have some resistance. It focuses your mind. But light language is another way of getting your mind out of the resistance and into another place entirely. Now, it doesn't do it as completely as ritual, but in fact, Christine and I have been experimenting with combining the two, and that's really awesome. Does something. They're very good partners like that. But it does a similar thing. You know, it doesn't do so much because it's not like a drama like a ritual is where you play it out and that kind of thing, but it does get your mind out of the way.
It could if you're channeling it, because sometimes people dance the light language too.
Sure.
And And it's like you're playing out something. Like, I don't do that.
Right.
But some people will actually use their whole body
Right.
to channel the light language.
Well, again, if it's something where it's combined with all these other things that are ritualistic, like,
And I think that's how it was used.
Right.
That they did it in a ritual setting.
Yeah. Right. So that's what light language is really good for, because it can really help you to get your mind off of everyday things and transcend into a different place. And it really does go well with ritual as well. But it's really useful in that way. It's amazing how that really works. And again, like in the guided meditation we did for the full moon, a lot of people said, or at least several people said, that, the guided meditation was great, but the light language really did it for them.
Couldn't you see the meditation as a ritual?
Sure.
Because it's like you were setting the mind up to relax and then we did it.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not as played out as you have your tools, but it still is a ritual.
Right. Well, anything that is for the purpose of getting some result is a ritual.
Oh, sure.
Anything that is for the purpose of raising energy for some intent. Now, here's what I want to say. So, a spell, a ritual, whatever, is basically moving energy with intent. Manifestation is moving energy with intent. But it's really, that was originally what magic did, what a ritual did.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go into that too deeply because it's not the topic today. But magic or ritual is moving energy very powerfully with intent. You program it with your intention.
Yep.
With the aid of maybe certain beings. You call on the elementals, the gods, the goddesses, whatever. And so that's what that is. Light language is the same thing. It's its own sort of spell or magic or ritual or manifestation insofar as you're moving energy with intent. It's all the same thing. It's just different forms of the same thing.
Yep.
Most things in life are moving energy with intent. We just don't realize it. A lot of things we do are things that move energy with intent. So it's not uncommon at all. It's just we don't realize it. So I was reading, Christine sent me this article she found about a pagan who used to be Pentecostal. And
you said that word with such dread.
I didn't mean to. And was it he or she? I don't remember.
It was a she.
Yeah. She was studying witchcraft, or I don't know.
She is a pagan now.
Yeah, she's studying witchcraft, I think. And was doing, I think it was a full moon ritual, basically. A full moon observation.
Yeah.
A full moon observance. And the energy that was raised in that observance, in that ritual, she said really brought her back to her Christian days. Because it felt the same way as if you're in a Pentecostal church and, they're singing, they're dancing, they're doing all the stuff they're doing. That's raising energy. That's ritual. Yeah. Now, a lot of times they don't have intent behind that, but it is...
If they did, could you imagine?
Well, I think that's actually what she said in the post.
It is.
Yeah. It's not directed energy, but it's energy, and they're raising energy. And so when she felt that, she's like, wow, this is the same thing. This feels like what they would have called the quote-unquote Holy Spirit. And so she started kind of reluctantly, but because it brought her back to that experience, using glossolalia or light language. And at first she felt really awful, kind of brought those old fears back. Well,
she was afraid that she was speaking the devil's language.
Right.
Because in very common Christian doctrine about speaking in tongues, if you don't speak from the Holy Spirit or from the Holy Spirit, you're speaking of the devil in tongues.
Right.
Which is stupid.
Or she was afraid of the verse that says blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the one unforgivable sin.
Right, but that's why.
Right.
Because they think that if you speak in tongues and you're pagan, you're speaking demonic tongues.
Right. So, but eventually she realized, it's the same energy. It's all energy. It's all the same.
And it's the same. There's nothing bad about it.
Right. So whether you're in a church, Christine works for a Catholic church and she feels the energy that it raises. Now, maybe not in the same way or in as great amounts as, say, like a charismatic service.
But I channel all of it into the music I do.
Yeah.
And direct it.
But any kind of religious observance is a powerful ritual. It raises a lot of energy. And it's all the same energy. It might feel slightly differently in certain ways because it's programmed in certain ways or has certain intents or certain beliefs behind it. But energy's energy, right? Yeah. And so when you're using light language, it's doing the same thing. It really does raise energy. And again, when you're doing it, you can, number one, select where it's coming from. You can say, well, I'm going to do this from, say, the goddess or a specific god or a being that I am familiar with or whatever. Or you can just leave it open if you want to. But number two, as you're doing that, you're receiving energy, and you can feel the energy you're receiving. If you're sensitive to energy, you can feel the energy you're receiving, and it's so powerful. And number three, you can program the energy with intent. You can say, I'm going to do this for the intention of blank, whatever. And it will do that. It will come through for that intent. And often the intent you choose will influence what kind of, what being comes through, if they're interested in that specific topic or if they have something to say about that or whatever. But you can program that energy with intent. Generally, you want to do that before you start speaking, because the way you speak is going to do it for you. You don't have to keep the intention in mind necessarily.
Right.
But you're programming that energy with intent. So that's a form of magic. That's a form of ritual. That's a form of manifestation. Something really useful is that, again, you cannot hold resistance while doing this. So if you're having a high resistance day, then you can use this to get out of that, because you can't focus on resistance while channeling pure energy.
Have you ever tried that when you've had a really bad day?
Sometimes. I'm still sort of acclimating to all this.
You just asked me to do it for you.
I usually ask Christine. And the changes are amazing. I mean, I had this past week a really stressful week.
Oh, yeah, that night.
Yes. And so a couple times, I think twice, I asked Christine, can you please do it with this intention? And
I would put music on.
Yeah, we have this New Age channel we use on Alexa. And the next day, things were so different. I felt a difference.
That was the first time.
Yeah, that was the first time. I don't remember what the second time was for.
Second time, you got really emotional. Like, you had to let out a lot of emotion.
Yeah, but it definitely works. And I'm not saying it'll work on the first try, because, resistance is a powerful thing, and you have a habit of it, so it's not going to go away in one day. But this is a way that either hearing it or speaking it or channeling it in some way, because as Christine said earlier, it's not always words. It could be...
Yeah, you can draw it.
Yeah, it could be written or danced.
Danced or sung. I'm getting there. I should be really open to singing it because I'm a musician, but that's why I'm not. Right. It's weird.
Yeah. So, but anyway, it's when you're doing that, you're not in resistance. And when you're not in resistance, that resistance loses momentum. You just have to make sure you stay in the high vibrational place that it brings you.
Yeah.
But it is a really quick way to get into a high vibrational place. And it will often bring up resistance that you have to release.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really good for resistance work. It's really good. Or for just helping you to bring a little more energy to your manifestation. It's really good for those things. So it's something I'm still experimenting with, so I'm not going to talk about it in a lot of detail. But those are the ways that it can definitely help anyone who's either speaking it / channeling in any way, or those who are listening to it. Because again, when you listen to it, and you, as I said earlier, you can listen to it several times and get different things out of it. It can do different things for you.
And it's a way of sound healing, and sound healing is very ancient.
Yeah. So, you can get different things out of it every time you use it. So it's not just one time and that's it. You can get continuous benefit from using it. Because let's say you have one for abundance, for example, and the first time you do it, it might work on one area, and then you listen to it again and it works on another area, and then you listen, but it's all related to abundance. It's clearing all those blocks and that kind of thing, but it's doing different things every time you listen to it, whatever you need it to do for that time. So that's why I say it's very flexible. It's not just a linear language. It's saying this is what's happening or whatnot.
One sound can carry so many meanings.
Yeah. So it's sort of, I've been thinking of it almost as a self-contained ritual in a sense. You know, sometimes, again, you do want to add more power and you might want to go through the whole 9 yards of the ritual and whatnot. And sometimes the ritual is just really beautiful anyway, so you just feel like doing it.
Yeah.
But it's sort of its own self-contained ritual because you raise the energy and you program the energy and you release the energy when you're done. And that's what a ritual is. Those are the steps of a ritual. So
Go figure.
So it's sort of a self-contained kind of, I don't want to say portable, but you know what I mean, ritual.
A portable ritual. I like it.
Just listen to it and there you go. You know, I'm not saying, again, it's not always that easy, but it sort of is also.
Well, it took you a while, but ever since I started reading the book, you always had me do it, and you became, I started real slow with you, but then you eventually, can you do it again? Yep. What you would say is, can you work on me? And I knew what that meant.
Right. So it can help in a lot of ways. Now, again, if you're listening to this, you may be totally open to it, and that's great. You may not at all be open to it, and that's fine. You may be a little open to it or just be curious about it. So feel free to come over to where I said the show notes are, which again is cocreationcoaching.org/create037, and ask questions about it, leave a comment. You know, if you have any questions about how it works, if you want to actually hear it, then on that same page, you can sign up for the new moon meditation where we'll be doing that. And so you can get a real personal experience of how that works. But if you have questions about it, feel free to comment on this podcast, and I will be happy to answer any of the questions you have. Or I'd love to hear about any experiences you've had with it or anything like that. So I definitely want to connect with you in regards to this because it's very new to my audience, probably because we haven't ever discussed this before. And I know for me, and I've been in the New Age off and on for 20 years, and I had never heard of light language before Christine brought it up. And then I was closed off to it because I was like, it's fake. You know, it's just Christian stuff and just weird and whatnot. But, and I'm still getting past that. And that's why I call it the light language, not anything else, because I need to separate that in my own mind. So I get that for a lot of people it might be the same thing, but it is a real thing. It is a real practice that's ancient, that has real value to it, and can benefit you in a lot of different ways. So I encourage you again just to check it out, ask questions about it if you have them. But I'm excited to be more public about this.
Me too. This is going to be fun.
This is kind of Christine's dream. She's been hoping for this.
I told him we're going to be known as the light language couple.
And, we had this idea of doing it for meditations. And, because one thing I want to do is release guided meditations. So we want to put that in the middle of meditations to sort of augment and amplify the result of the meditation. And I got an email where someone listened to it and got the result they wanted immediately after. Like, literally they stopped, and then immediately after, something happened. And I got, I think, another email where it happened very soon after. It does things. It really does work. So, and these people, I don't even know if they were open to it. They didn't really know anything about it. Someone called it, they said they were chanting, really worked. Okay, whatever you want to call it. It sort of was. We did it in an interesting way because I didn't want to do it in a way that was kind of in your face, because then I knew a lot of people were new to this, so I did it kind of in the background. But it worked out really well with our full moon meditations. So again, I hope that you're open to this. I'd love to receive your questions. If you want to see the show notes for this podcast, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/create037. And if you want to subscribe to us on iTunes or rate or review this podcast, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/create-iTunes. And that will take you there. So I thank you for joining us today, especially in such a topic as what we were talking about today. And for listening through. That's awesome. I appreciate it. But we will see you in another couple of weeks for another episode of Co-Create Your Life. Until then, I am Brandon Olivares.
And I'm Christine Olivares.
And as always, anything is possible.